Hello friends and welcome to my channel Iballdesigningdeveloper. Like you all know that previously we have started a new series of C++ in which we have covered up many of the things, like we have covered up that if we are starting with structures, so what are structures in C++, how to use elements, then we have also covered up variables and all that. And now in this video we will be starting that what are variables scope, because already we have worked on variables in C++ but we have not seen that if we are using a variable with a scope, so how we can do that, like what is a main scope of variable, why we use it, or where to use with scope or within the scope. So I hope you'll be enjoying this video in which we will be working on variable scope in C++. So if you understand this video and if you enjoy this amazing tutorial here, so remember to hit a like to this video, and if you're new on this channel, want to see more videos like that, so remember to subscribe, and after subscribing hit notification bell as well so you can get the notifications of all my coming up videos which I'll be uploading in future. So now what we are waiting for, let's move to computer screen and let's get started. So now here we are on the computer screen, and like I've told you in the start that today in this video we'll be covering up a tutorial here of variable scope. We will be understanding that if we are using variable scope, so what is the purpose to use it, why we are using it, and where we can use it. So now that you understand how functions work, it is important to learn how variables act inside and outside of functions. Yeah, that's really important. In C++, variables are only accessible inside the region they are created. This is called scope. Like they are saying in C++ variables are only accessible inside the region they are being created. So this is called as a scope. Local scope, if we talk about local scope here, so a variable created inside a function belongs to the local scope of that function and can only be used inside that function. Like if I'm creating a variable which is created inside a function which belongs to the local scope of that function, and it can be only used inside the function. Like this is the example of local scope here. If I have created one function with void value, means I want to return a value, that's why I have written this void, and after using this I have used an other thing in this function which is a local variable that belongs to this function. So it is init x equal to 5, and the output we will be getting here after printing this x will be 5, because this will be a local scope which we will be getting in the output printed by this function, and that's the thing. Then after just getting the function called, we will be using another init main function in which we will be calling my function, and after calling this my function you will be getting this 5 printed in the output, because we have called this 5 as a local variable that belongs to this function. Now we can also learn about local variable more. Like here it is written, a local variable cannot be used outside the function it belongs to. If you try to access it outside the function, an error occurs. Like you can just understand this thing, if we are using variable, or sorry, local variable outside the function where it is not belongs, so that there you will be getting an error, because it is saying us that you cannot use local variable outside the function it belongs to. If you're doing that, so you will be getting an error. And now if we just see, this is the thing which we are doing, like we are just using a function out of the, you can say, out of the main function where it belongs to. So then you will be getting an error occur when you will be running this command here, or this example here. Now the second scope which we see in variable scope is global scope. We have learned about local scope because in short word you can just say local scope is a thing which you have to use inside the function where it belongs to. If you are using that thing outside the function where it belongs to, so you will be getting an error there. Now if we talk about global scope, a variable created outside of a function is called a global variable and belongs to the global scope. Global variables are available from within any scope, global and local. You can just consider this global scope as a opposite of local variable or local scope. In local scope, what happens is that like we can only create a scope inside the function. If we create outside, so we will be getting an error. And in global scope, you will be creating a variable outside a function. If you create inside the function, you will be getting error. That's the thing, and that's the difference between both these scope which we used in variable. So a global variable, what is a global variable? If we just understand that a variable created outside of a function is global and can therefore be used by anyone. Like global variable can be used by anyone, a global scope can be used by anyone. It's not a compulsory to use global scope only outside of the function. You can use it inside the function as well, but thing is that you will be getting an error like we were using in local scope as well. Now if we talk about global variable, so this init x equal to 5 which we have added outside this function, it is called as global variable, and in my function I have created x value so that I can print this x and I can get the value as 5. And now after that I want to call this function as well so that we can get the output printed as 5. So for that I will be using init main, and then I will be calling this my function or any function name which you have written here, like I have used my function, so I'll be printing this here. We can also use x here, like if you want to use function down, so you can use down as well. You can use global variable down or up, it's your choice. Like I have used here up as well and down as well, so I can show you that if you're using it up or down, it's nothing happens. Naming variables, if you operate with the same variable name inside and outside of a function, C++ will treat them as two separate variables, one available in the global scope outside the function and one available in the local scope inside the function. Example, the function will print the local x and then the code will print the global x. So one function will be printing the local scope as x and the second function will be printing the global as x. So now the first value which we are adding here as global variable x, and the global variable x we have written as 5, and then we are calling the function as my function, and in that value again we are adding 22 inside this function which is called as local variable, and we are printing this local variable using this x again because the value is x here, and it will be refers to the local variable x which we have added. And after just doing that we will be creating another function in which we will be calling my function which we have used, and then we will be referring the global variable inside this function so that we can get the output of this global variable as well which we have added at the top. However, you should avoid using the same variable name for both globally and locally variables as it can lead to errors and confusion. In general, you should be careful with global variables since they can be accessed and modified from any function. It is just saying us that like you can use this type of things here, it's your choice, but thing is that if you're a beginner and if you're using these things, so it can be lead to any error or it will be confusing for you. So it is just referring us that like you can use these things for example but not use it compulsory. It's not really like recommended by C++ to use this thing here, but you should be careful with global variables because they can be accessed and modified by any function or from any function. If we want to see another example like change the value of x from my function, so we can just change the value of x as well, which is 5, and we can plus x, so it will be returning the value as global variable, but it will be returning as 7 because we have added 2 times plus, that's why. The increment value of x by 1 and print it. So then now the value which we will be have added here will be 1, means the increment value which we will be getting in this 5 will be 1, so 5 will be became 6, and after printing this x we will be getting the output printed as 6 because we have printed like we have increment the value of x by 1, that's why. Now the value of x is 6 and no longer 5, that's the thing, and the output you will be getting will be as 6 here, like in example it is showing me. In conclusion, the sum of to use local variables with good variable name as much you can. This will make your code easier to maintain and better to understand. However, you will may find global variables when working on existing C++ programs or while collaborating with others. Therefore, it is good to understand how the scope works and how to use it efficiently to make sure your code is clean or clear and functional. Now moving at the top, I will be just using this first example of local scope here. I will be copying these things and I will be just so now here like I've told you that we were just starting with these all things and we have seen that how we can just use this variable loop. So now we can just start with that, like if we are using variable scope, so how we are using and like how we are working it with practically. So what I'm going to do is I'll be copying this first example here now. And after copying this first example, I'll be just moving on to my Google Chrome. Why I'm moving to Google Chrome? Because now here we will be just adding these examples in our text IDE, which is Replit. Like you all know that previously when we were working with C++, we were using the same Replit IDE to just start with these all things. So what I'm going to do is I'll be removing all the things from here and I will be adding like hashtag include IOStream, which is the starting code of every C++ file which we create, and then I will be adding using namespace std as well, so that we can get all the things working with the namespace, and then we can paste all the codes which we have copied because already we have created the function there, so that's why we don't need that. Now here I will be just changing the name here and I'll be writing variable scope because today in this video I'm just telling you about variable scope in C++. So I'll be adding like this and I'll be pressing enter. And after doing it, you can just press OK, so that you can just save all the things. And you can also see we are getting these things as well, which we have added. Like, yeah, I have told you that we are working with variable scope, and we have also understand that if we are using variable scope, so what's the purpose to use it, why we use it, and how we use it. Now we have understand that as well. So for using variable scope, obviously you have to create one function like I have created, and you can give any name to your function. I have given my function here, and I have also not created any value. I have only written void because I don't want to return any value in my output, that's why. And in that function, I have created one integer in which I have written x variable as 5, and I have printed that x so that I can get this output as 5 printed on my terminal. And I'm also defining this function in another function of init main, so that I can call this function and I can get the output as 5 printed in x. Now I will be running, and you can just see simply we are getting 5 printed here because we are using one variable here which is 5, and this 5 variable which we are using, we are adding this variable in one element which is x. You can also call this as a local variable which is belongs to a function, but we will also call it as a variable because x is a variable normally. But in normal terms, when you are using this thing in functions, it will be called as a local variable that belongs to this function which is named as my function. So like this, you can use variable scope in C++. So I hope you understand if we are starting with variable scope, so basically how we can start with it, how we can use it, and if we are using it, so what output we will be getting in purpose of local variable which belongs to the function which you are using with the name of. So if you have understand this video of variable scope in C++, like how we can use it, so remember to hit a like to this video. And if you're new on this channel, want to see more videos like that, so remember to subscribe, and after subscribing, hit notification bell as well, so you can get the notifications of all my coming up videos which I will be uploading in future. And remember to check out my all the previous videos as well which I have uploaded in this series, so that you can also learn that things like what are elements and like what are functions in C++, and from start if you don't understand that why we are adding this local variable to this function. But if you have understand that all things like what is function, how to use it, and why we are adding this local variable in this function, so it is really good for you, because in coming up videos I'll be uploading more things about C++, like what is classes and objects, what is oops, and then we'll be also working on recursion and all that. So just I'll be meeting in next tutorial here of C++ or any other video which we will be uploading on this channel soon. So for today, goodbye.